Welcome to the Unspoken Files, the home of the darkest stories and the creepiest mysteries. If you're fascinated by true crime, ghostly encounters, and haunted artifacts, then you're in the right place. In the Unspoken Files, we dive deep into the most chilling and unexplainable events throughout history. Some things should never be uncovered, some mysteries are meant to stay hidden, and certain objects should never be touched. So, buckle up and prepare for a journey into the eerie, the terrifying, and the things that go bump in the night. Never miss a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned, if you dare. When Jack and I first heard about the old house at the end of Oakwood Road, we saw it as an opportunity, a new beginning, a fresh start. The kind of place where we could leave our pasts behind and build something new. The house was cheap, neglected, and tucked away at the edge of a small, quiet town. The locals spoke of it in hushed tones, but we dismissed their warnings. After all, we thought, what was the harm? Old houses were bound to have their quirks. We packed our bags and moved in, excited for what was to come. At first, it felt perfect. The silence, the seclusion. The house, though weathered and worn, had a strange charm to it. The floorboards creaked underfoot, the windows let in just enough light, and the air smelled of dust and faded memories. It was everything we'd wanted, or so we thought. But as the days wore on, something started to feel off. A quiet unease settled over me, like the house was watching, waiting. And the people around town, those who had lived here far longer than we ever would, began to act strange when we mentioned where we were living. They'd avoid our eyes, change the subject, or just give us pitying looks. Stay away from Oakwood Road, they'd warn, that place isn't what it seems. Of course, we brushed it off as superstition. It was just a house, after all, right? But then came the whispers. At first, they were barely audible, a soft murmur, like a breeze brushing through the trees outside. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe it was just the house settling, the wind in the rafters. But it didn't stop. Each night, as the clock struck midnight, I would hear it. The voices calling to me, distant, faint, and familiar, my name slipping through the air, as though someone, or something, was trying to reach me from the darkness. I tried to ignore it. I thought I was imagining things, but the whispers became more insistent, more urgent, until one night, they stopped being whispers at all. They became commands, sharp, clear, and unmistakable. Come closer. And that's when I realized, we weren't alone. There was something in that house. Something that had been there long before we arrived, something that waited in the shadows, feeding off the silence we'd foolishly believed would protect us. Every night, the house seemed to pulse with life, noises from the walls, shadows moving in the corners of my vision, a cold presence lingering just behind my shoulder. The deeper I looked into the darkness, the more I could feel it staring back. But it wasn't until the shadows began to move that I understood the true horror of what we had gotten ourselves into. There were things in the house, things that didn't belong to this world, things that moved when I wasn't looking, things that whispered my name and beckoned me forward, deeper into the unknown. The whispers, the shadows, they were not mere figments of my imagination. They were real, and they were coming for us. It started small, almost laughable, really. The kind of thing you'd chalk up to an old house settling. The floorboards creaked when no one was walking on them. The windows rattled even when there was no wind. We thought it was just the house, that age-old creaking and groaning of beams and plaster. After all, this place had been here far longer than we had. And houses like these tend to make strange noises, right? But as the days went by, the strange things didn't stop. They multiplied. At first, it was just an occasional floorboard creak or a distant tap in the walls, nothing that made me think twice. But soon, the sounds became impossible to ignore. It started with a slow, dragging noise from the attic late at night. At first, I assumed it was animals, maybe rats or squirrels. But no animal, I'm sure, could move like that, like something large and deliberate was scraping across the floor, back and forth. The unsettling sounds kept me awake for hours. I told myself it was just my nerves, or the house settling, whatever that meant. But then, things started happening while I was awake. One evening, I was alone in the living room, curled up with a book. Jack was out running errands, and I finally felt like I could relax. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving the room bathed in a soft, dusky light. I thought I heard something, a faint rustling from the hallway. I looked up from my book, expecting to see Jack, but the house was empty. The rustling stopped as soon as I stood up to check. I walked down the hall, my heart racing, but there was nothing there, no sign of anyone. At night, the whispers began. They weren't loud, just soft at first, almost like someone talking just out of earshot. I thought it was nothing, probably just the wind outside rustling the leaves or maybe my imagination playing tricks on me. But the more I tried to ignore them, the stronger the whispers grew. They sounded almost like familiar voices, saying things I couldn't make out, like they were trying to get my attention. At first, it was just vague mumblings, but then, one night, I heard something I couldn't explain. "Come closer," I froze. The voice was clear, so clear, in fact, it sent a chill straight down my spine. It wasn't Jack's voice. It wasn't anyone I recognized, but I could swear I heard my name slip through the darkness, soft and inviting, like a secret only meant for me. I shot up from bed and looked around the room. The whispers faded away, but the air felt thick with something I couldn't describe. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to pulse, stretching out like fingers, creeping toward me. I switched on the light, half expecting to see someone standing in the doorway, but there was nothing. Nothing but the heavy silence of the house. I lay back down, trying to convince myself that it was just a dream, but sleep wouldn't come. The whispers never stopped, they only grew louder, more insistent. "Come closer," the voice seemed to echo in my head, even after the house had fallen quiet again. I wanted to go downstairs, to look for the source of the sound, but my body wouldn't move. I felt paralyzed, as if something unseen was holding me back. When Jack returned, I asked if he'd heard anything, but he just shrugged it off. "It's an old house, remember," he said, laughing it off. He even teased me about being tired from the move, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something was waiting, watching. Jack didn't see it, he didn't hear it, but I did. Every night, the whispers became clearer, and each time, they were calling to me, closer, closer, until I couldn't tell if I was hearing them in my mind or if they were coming from the very walls of the house itself. I tried to ignore it, but the house, it didn't let me forget. The first time I saw it, I thought I was imagining things. I was sitting on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen filling the silence. But then, something caught my eye. I glanced up and, for just a split second, I saw it, a tall, thin figure standing motionless in the hallway, just beyond the soft glow of the living room light. It was like a shadow, but it wasn't. It was too solid, too distinct. It was almost as though it was there, but it wasn't. My heart skipped a beat. I blinked hard, trying to focus, and when I opened my eyes again, it was gone. But the air in the room didn't feel the same. It felt thicker, heavier, as though the shadows had somehow crept into the corners of the house, making everything feel off. I rubbed my eyes, trying to convince myself it was just the darkness playing tricks on me. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe I was just tired from the stress of the move, and my mind was seeing things that weren't there. But it was there. I knew it. The figure was tall, too tall for anyone I knew, and it seemed to melt into the shadows as if it weren't solid at all. Just like the whispers, it felt wrong. It didn't belong here. I didn't tell Jack. What could I say? He'd just laugh and dismiss it as my overactive imagination. After all, he hadn't heard the whispers, hadn't felt the cold, and certainly hadn't seen what I had seen. He would chalk it up to the house being old and me being on edge. So I kept it to myself, hoping that maybe it was nothing. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. And then it happened again. I was sitting in the same spot the next night, staring at the dark hallway like I always did when I heard that unmistakable sound, the creak of the floorboard from upstairs. I looked up, expecting to see Jack, but he was still in the kitchen. There it was, a shape, tall and thin, standing in the hallway once again. This time, it was closer. I could see the outlines of its limbs, stretching unnaturally long, moving like liquid into the darkness, as though it was part of the very shadows themselves. I froze, unable to blink. My body was paralyzed with fear. For a moment, I thought maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, but the more I stared at it, the more I could see. Its edges seemed to blend into the dark, as if it wasn't even a thing at all, just some grotesque part of the shadow itself. I blinked. Gone. This time, I couldn't explain it away. I had seen it. I had felt it, and I could no longer pretend it wasn't real. The worst part, I could feel it, not just in the way my skin crawled, but in the way the house seemed to shift around me, as if the walls were bending to its will. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper. It was like something wanted me to see it, wanted me to know it was here. Each night after that, the shadows grew bolder. They didn't just lurk in the corners anymore, they moved. I would catch glimpses of them darting across rooms, just out of my line of sight. Sometimes, I'd see them out of the corner of my eye, flickering along the hallway walls like dark figures, stretching and bending unnaturally, always just out of reach. And the whispers, they came back, more insistent now, like they were calling to me, coaxing me toward something, pulling me toward the darkness. I tried to avoid the basement. That was where the whispers had started, where they'd seemed to come from, but I couldn't ignore them. They were louder now, always coming from below. Come closer. The voice was lower, more demanding, like it was angry I hadn't listened before. The basement door, always locked, always a barrier between us and whatever was down there, began to creak open on its own. Sometimes, I'd wake in the middle of the night, hearing the unmistakable sound of the door swinging on its hinges, the deep groan of the wood that echoed through the house like a warning. Jack never noticed, or maybe he didn't want to, but I knew that whatever had been waiting in the shadows, was still watching, waiting, and it wanted me to come down. The basement had always been cold, even with the heater running full blast. No matter how warm the rest of the house felt, that basement was always bitterly cold, as though it were trapped in a different time, frozen in a moment that couldn't escape. It was the kind of place you'd avoid unless you absolutely had to go down there. And I had never needed to. But lately, it was as if something had changed. The coldness of the basement began to feel alive, as if it were waiting for me to notice it. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. There was a pull, subtle at first, just a twinge in the back of my mind, but growing stronger with each passing day. It wasn't just that I felt drawn to the basement. It felt like something in the basement was pulling me in, calling me to explore its depths, urging me to go down there. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just the stress, or maybe my nerves were getting the best of me. But no matter how hard I tried to distract myself, I could feel the pull, like invisible hands gently but relentlessly tugging at my thoughts. One night, the whispers were louder than ever before. They weren't soft like before, not mere murmurings in the distance. They were sharp, clear, insistent. Come closer. The voice, my name, slipped from the darkness below, softer and yet more commanding than ever before. It was no longer just a whisper. It was as if the very walls were speaking to me, urging me, coaxing me toward the basement. The sound curled around my mind like smoke, thick and suffocating, drawing me closer to the threshold. I couldn't fight it. It was as though something had taken control of my body. My legs moved without my permission, my feet dragging me closer and closer to the basement door. My heart raced in my chest, pounding against my ribs, but I couldn't stop. When I reached the door, I stopped. The air was thick with something I couldn't name, damp, cold, and heavy with an unseen presence. The basement door creaked open slowly, as if it had been waiting for this very moment. The air that rushed out from the crack in the door was oppressive, like the atmosphere of a tomb, suffocating in its weight. I stepped forward. As soon as I crossed the threshold, I saw it. There, standing at the base of the stairs, was the figure. The same one I'd seen before, tall, too tall, and stretching unnaturally into the darkness. Its silhouette was faint, barely more than a shadow in the blackness of the basement, but it was unmistakable. It stood motionless, watching, its presence almost palpable, like an oppressive force pressing in on me from all sides. I froze. The whispers grew louder, now more like a chant, a rhythm that seemed to come from every direction, surrounding me, drowning me. The shadows around me seemed to dance, swirling in the dim light, forming grotesque shapes, moving toward me like they had a will of their own. The air felt like it was tightening around me, suffocating me, the walls pressing inward. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the figure, even as the shadows reached out to me, as though the darkness itself was alive, wanting to touch me, wanting to pull me into its depths. Just as I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I felt it. Something cold, something icy that gripped my wrist with such force that I gasped in shock. I spun around, panic surging through me. My heart felt like it was about to burst from my chest. But when I turned, there was no one there. The room was empty. The door behind me slammed shut with a deafening bang, so loud it shook the house. I jumped back, my breath coming in ragged gasps, but the moment the door clicked shut, the whispers ceased. Silence. A deafening silence that felt worse than the whispers themselves. I backed away from the door, my eyes darting around the basement, searching for the figure. It was gone. The shadows had receded, and the coldness that had seeped into my bones began to lift. But the presence lingered, hanging in the air like a thick fog, pressing in on me, making every breath feel like a struggle. I couldn't stay down there any longer. I stumbled back up the stairs, my legs shaky, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the door handle. The basement door closed behind me with a finality that echoed in my mind. I had barely closed the door when I heard it. The whispers returned, softer now, but unmistakable. Come back. But I didn't. I couldn't. The figure in the basement, the cold, the whispers, it wasn't just a figment of my imagination. Whatever was in that basement was real, and it wanted me to stay. I tried to forget what had happened that night, but it was impossible. No matter where I went in the house, the shadows were always there, lurking just beyond my vision. The whispers followed me, curling through the walls, seeping into every corner, every room. At night, they were the worst. They never stopped. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear them, urgently, desperately, calling me to the basement, to the dark corners of the house where the darkness waited. I couldn't escape them. The whispers were inside my head, pressing against my skull, growing louder and more frantic with each passing night. At times, they sounded like pleading voices, like something was trapped, begging for help. But I knew better now. There was nothing human about the voices that taunted me. They were far darker, more sinister. They wanted me. It wanted me. Jack thought I was losing my mind. He didn't hear the whispers. He didn't feel the oppressive weight of the shadows pressing against him. When I tried to explain, he would just brush it off, tell me I was imagining things, or worse, blame it on the stress of moving. But I knew what I felt, and I knew what I saw. I wasn't alone. One night, as I lay in bed, the whispers grew louder, almost unbearable. It was like 1,000 voices whispering all at once, rising and falling in a sickening chorus, filling my mind with an overwhelming sense of dread. It felt as though the walls themselves were closing in on me. I could feel the weight of something pressing down on me, suffocating me, as though an invisible force had wrapped itself around my chest, slowly tightening. It wasn't just in my head. I could feel it. The cold, the shadows, the presence. It was here, in the room with me, and it wasn't going to stop until it had me. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic rhythm that seemed to match the whispers growing louder, closer. I tried to push the covers off, to escape the suffocating air that surrounded me, but it was no use. I could feel the pull, the same pull that had drawn me to the basement before, tugging at my body, my mind. I couldn't breathe. It was coming for me. That was when I decided. I had to leave. The thought hit me like a flash of clarity. The house, the basement, the shadows, it would never stop. There was no fighting it, no hiding from it. It was going to take me, just like it had taken others before me. I scrambled out of bed, my hands trembling as I grabbed whatever I could, stuffing it into a bag with frantic urgency. I didn't care about my clothes or my things. I just needed to get out, to escape before it was too late. The whispers were growing louder, almost deafening now, echoing in every corner of my mind, urging me to turn back, to come down to the basement, to give in. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I had to leave. I rushed to the door, throwing it open and bolting down the hallway toward the front door. My heart raced in my chest, my pulse pounding in my ears, the whispers growing into a cacophony of screams that filled every inch of my head. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to see the shadows moving in the corners of the rooms, waiting for me to make a mistake. I grabbed my keys and yanked the door open. But just as I stepped outside, I heard it, the soft click of the door behind me slamming shut. It was a sound that made my blood run cold. I didn't turn around. I didn't look back. I ran, faster than I ever had in my life, away from the house that had held me captive for far too long. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just knew I had to get as far away from Oakwood Road as possible. Jack didn't understand. He didn't see what I saw. He didn't hear the whispers, didn't feel the shadows moving in the dark. But I didn't care. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't make him see. He was safe, and that's all that mattered now. I had to save myself. I left everything behind, my past, my belongings, the life I had started to build. But I knew I could never return to that house. I couldn't even bring myself to look back. I drove away, the engine roaring to life, the road stretching out before me, leading me far away from Oakwood Road. I could still hear the whispers, even now. They were with me. They always would be. And the worst part, I could feel them, still waiting for me to come back, to return. But I never will. I never went back to Oakwood Road. To this day, I can still hear the whispers when I close my eyes. They're faint at first, just a whispering echo, but as soon as I let my guard down, they grow louder, creeping into my thoughts like a shadow in my mind. They haunt my dreams, slipping into the corners of my sleep, calling me back to that house. Even in the daylight, I feel them lingering, just out of reach, an ever-present reminder of what I escaped, of what still waits for me. I can never shake the feeling that something is still watching me, following me, wherever I go. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I swear I can hear the creak of floorboards, the soft scratching of unseen feet moving across the floor, and the faint murmur of voices whispering in the darkness. It's as if Oakwood Road has reached out and pulled me back, no matter how far I run. I don't know what it was that lived in that house, or what kind of darkness it held, something ancient and twisted, something that had slumbered for far too long, waiting for someone to open the door. Was it the house itself, or something far older, something much darker that had found its home in that place? All I know for sure is that it wasn't just the house that was haunted. It was Oakwood Road itself. Some houses aren't meant to be lived in. They were never meant to shelter anyone. They were made to trap, to ensnare, to claim those who dared to enter. The darkness that lurked in those walls wasn't meant to let go. And Oakwood Road, it will never let go of its secrets. Whatever was waiting in that house is still out there, still whispering, still watching, still hungry. And I can only wonder, who will be next? If you enjoyed this chilling tale, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss an eerie story from the Unspoken Files. We're just getting started, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Join the community of thrill seekers and stay tuned for more dark mysteries, true crime, ghost stories, and haunted objects that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Remember, the world is full of secrets waiting to be uncovered, and we're here to reveal them. Until next time, stay safe, and as always, keep your eyes open. Who knows what's lurking in the shadows?